right. Well, thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to have this conversation about water safety coalition building. I know there are people who are on the line today that are kind of in multiple different places when it comes to this particular space of work. So we're glad to kind of dive into it a little bit deeper, in particular for those who maybe are just getting started or who are interested in getting started. So if you haven't already, and you joined us just a few seconds ago, if you would either rename yourself to add your state to your profile or throw it into the chat so we have a good sense of who all is on the line, that would be really helpful. Thank you. Our goal today, just as a reminder, is to share resources and to provide some learning opportunities across the collective networks of both the U.S. National Water Safety Action Plan and the National Drowning Prevention Alliance. We're really excited as our first joint webinar to have Alyssa Megram and the NDPA with us today to really share this opportunity across both networks and to bring everybody that we can to the table to have this conversation. So with that, I will let Alyssa say a few words.
Sure. No, just echoing what Tina said, it's the NDPA is really excited to be part of this. Obviously, the action plan and those doing the action plan in their respective states and communities are a very valuable part of this alliance, and we're all doing this work and we want to do it side by side. So to get to do things like this when we partner and do joint things is, I think, only going to help in terms of collaboration and connection. So just really excited. And I think this is the first of, maybe future ones. And certainly some things at the conference, which I know Tina will talk about later, that are more in that partnership and collaboration vein. So thank you everybody for being here. It's nice to see so many familiar names and locations.
Thanks, Alyssa. So for those of you who are not familiar, I am Tina Dessart. I am the current interim executive director for the U.S. National Water Safety Action Plan. And so we'll be kind of running behind the scenes and throwing some links into the chat as we go throughout this conversation. Our format today is really kind of a panel to begin with. And I'd like to introduce both Morag Mackay, our most recent past chair of the National Action Plan, and then Megan Ferraro, who is our current chair for the National Action Plan. And then we'll have Alyssa Megram from the NDPA running kind of moderator, if you will, for kind of a panel discussion to begin with. And then we'll make sure that we save time for Q&A at the end. My request would be that if you have immediate questions as we go through, because the questions that we've laid out for our panelists are kind of run through kind of a step-by-step, if you will, or a layered approach to the conversation. And so if you have immediate questions, if you would throw them into the chat, then we can ask them and respond to them in time. And then everything else, if you would save towards the end, we'll ensure that time for Q&A. Really quickly, before we get started on the questions, I would just like to thank the steering committee, the members of the steering committee for the National Action Plan who might be on the line with us today. I see David Bell, I believe Connie Harvey was registered. And so just thank you for your time and for joining us. And with that, I will turn it over to Alyssa and we can get started.
Great, thank you. Yes, so as Tina just said, I'm going to be the moderator. We have some questions and I'm going to direct them both at Megan and Morag, and you guys can answer whoever feels like inspired to answer and then just play off of each other. I will probably be throwing in a few tidbits and examples along the way too from my work in Austin with the Central Texas Drowning Prevention Action Team and the Texas Water Safety Coalition and some other things. I think examples definitely help people understand better. So with the first, let's just get going with the first one. I'll throw at you all is, what is the first step in turning an idea or a shared concern into a coalition? And whoever wants to go at that first, go for it.
I guess, my experience with this is it's usually someone with a lot of passion for an issue who is what I call an instigator. Now, that instigator may or may not stay the full course of a process that they get started, but they see something and they want to see it changed and they agitate and begin two words there, instigate and agitate, to start thinking about getting something started. But that initial step, and where do I go from having this passion and wanting to see change happen, can be really daunting. And so I always say that agitators and instigators should look for friends first, other people that are interested in agitating and instigating something, and start having conversations and sort of try to just figure out, if what it is they think they want to achieve, and then how to possibly go about it. And then the next thing I would say is just that we try to really think about this first step in the reflection to action phase that we develop for the U.S. National Action Plan. And it's based on experience from doing processes like these, including Megan's experience with the ZAC Foundation, in terms of you need to do some planning up front before you launch something, so that you've thought it through. And we really walk you through, okay, if you really want to become a coalition and you want to develop your local action plan, here's this 12-step process. But the first step is really thinking through all 12 steps a little bit, at least initially, and thinking through what you might want to do. And then you start thinking who you might want to do it with. But we'll talk a little bit more about the who in a minute. I'm going to turn it over to Megan to add into, how do you get something started?
I think Morag is exactly right. It's having that initial spark. It could be an event that happened in your community. It could be a loss, a tragedy. And starting with that small group of like-minded individuals who are dedicated and frankly have the bandwidth to focus on the issue with you. And then really looking at those steps that have been laid out by the U.S. National Water Safety Action Plan. And those steps will help guide you along the way to getting to a place where not only do you have a really well thought out plan, but you have a plan that has been contributed to by as many stakeholders in your community as possible. Really ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to provide that input, because we all look at things through our own personal lens and our own biases. And so having a table that's filled with folks from all walks of life, that could touch any area of an issue, to provide that input throughout your process will ensure that you have a plan that is able to be implemented. I think that can be a place where people get tripped up. You may think to yourself, I'm an expert in this space, I don't need any input. Well, that director of transportation might have a really good solution for that problem about how to get kids to those swimming lessons, or that local parish priest might have the ability to convince his congregants that swimming lessons save lives and they change lives. And that radio host that you think has nothing to do with your issue may be able to help amplify what you're doing and communicate your message much more easily than you could do on your own. So really thinking through a small group at the onset and then broadening that tent as you go through your process.
Yeah. And I think that's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was just gonna, ask, do either of you have suggestions for, so when you get a group of people to the table and you realize there are gaps or there are people that are not there, any suggestions for how do you get those people that are not at the table to the table?
So I think,
go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, I just was going to say, so one of the questions when we first started these community roundtables back before COVID, we would identify what the issues were in the community, right? Where were the challenges? And then we would go around the table and everyone would have to say who was not there. Who could solve for this problem that's not here? And that was a really helpful way for us to think, oh, yeah, I never would have thought about that. That's a great idea. And then we were, as we went from community to community, we were able to replicate that strategy and ask, do you think the Department of Transportation could be helpful here? And people were like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. So I think asking everybody in the room who's not here that should be is a simple way to really get at some of that.
Yeah. And if you haven't downloaded the reflection to action, the first part of the guide, which really talks about getting started and the reflection phase, there are like a series of questions for each of the parts of the process that you can plan around initially. But then when you get into that next stage, which is talking about partners and collaborators, we've got 2 tools to help you. One is a super long list of potential partners and collaborators that is very broad at the back of the document, for you to start thinking through, do I have someone like this in my community that might be helpful? And then the other tool is called, who are the people in my neighborhood? And those of you that are my age will recognize that we lifted that from Sesame Street. But the idea there is to think about these different organizations or roles within the community, and then think about your process that you've started to plan. And, you know, are they someone that has data? And we need data at the beginning to start thinking about what's happening in the community. So who are the people that might have data that could bring that to the table? Is it who is responsible for managing the water environment? So, oh, wait a minute, who owns pools in the community? Oh, do we have a lakefront? Yeah, who's responsible for that? So you sort of start thinking about those pieces of the puzzle, and you can start to say when, and then think about when you want to involve them. Are they someone that is so vital to this that they should be at the table from day one and they would be so valuable for us? Or are they someone that you realize, you know what, at some point we want to bring all the data people together, so let's plan a data meeting and bring all those people together. So you really think through the process and decide who, when, and how you want to involve people based on the step, and that tool will help you do that. And then the other thing you really have to think about when you're thinking about putting together a action plan is also who's going to implement it. So we might bring all these people together to plan it, but in the end, who's going to be responsible for some of these actions? So you also want to include that group. And then reflect on the final step. I always say is reflect on who can make decisions, because you might have the most amazing set of well-meaning people in the room, but if they can't speak for their organizations or commit on behalf of their organizations, you may need to build some time for that step to happen, for them to go back and talk to their leadership and get commitment for them to come back to the table and be part of something. So I think and then once you have your group that you think, then I think that Megan's question is genius, because who's missing now? Who don't we have? And the other thing I think you can expect is that you'll probably be adding people throughout the process, because you're going to find new people that are doing different things, and you're going to want to involve them to ensure you're being as inclusive as possible. But then the other piece that is the balance piece in all of this is how and when do you involve people? If you have 100 people in the room for every meeting, you are going to struggle to make progress, which is why we suggest a core group, and then thinking through the different steps and parts of the process. When does it make sense to bring people together in a room and have them think around the tables and brainstorm and come up with ideas, or share information into the information pool that you're basing everything off of? And when do you need just some people to take all of that and try and process it and come back to the group with something? So thinking through ahead of time when you want to involve the broader group is also really valuable in terms of ensuring that people feel they've got opportunities to be heard, opportunities to contribute, but you've still got sort of a core group that will be able to move things forward without getting bogged down.
I think I'll just add in a little thing from experience with the Texas Water Safety Coalition. There is that core leadership group is really important to keep things moving and in motion, because when we had a lot of that, where we had a lot of people, and then, you need to have people that are working on it, moving things and sort of puppeteering from above to be able to make sure people are engaged. And I saw that Tina put into the chat the tool, and I think it's amazing the resources that the action plan has to help support in these, documents that are going to help make these things a lot easier for people. Megan, do you have anything to add on this one? Otherwise, I'll move to the next partners and collaborators. No? Okay. Well, this kind of flows in, like, how do you make sure the right voices are included without it becoming overwhelming? I don't know if I feel like we started talking about that, but are other things you want to add to that piece?
Well, I think when you're having those initial meetings and you're identifying, you know, if you're lucky enough to have a Kirby Morgan in your initiative and you have access to that data and you can understand who's drowning and why and where, you can start to identify, you know, who those partners and collaborators should be and who should be at the table. So, I mean, I think to the extent that and Morag referenced this earlier, that you have access to data and you're able to really have a clear picture. And listen, not all drownings, both fatal and non-fatal, are going to be in those data reports, but it's a really important jumping off point. And I would say to the extent you can start there and identifying partners that feed into those types of incidents. And those prevention partners, right, that would prevent those incidents from ever occurring. I think that's probably another way to look at identifying who those partners around the table should be.
Yeah. I think one of the other things that's really interesting about when you think about drowning prevention is the breadth of potential partners who have a piece of your puzzle. So, you know, you think about it, some of us, and that's just my training, come at it from a public health approach. So there's that whole public health arm of people. There are researchers that are interested in this. Then you have the whole aquatics field that is there for different reasons, but play a really important role in drowning prevention as well. And then you have the interest groups that are reflecting some of the groups that may be at more risk in your community, the community organizations that support, you know, maybe you've got, let me think, you know, is there an autism group? Because we know kids with autism are at increased risk. Is there a Hispanic community group? Is there a Black African American community group? Is there an older adults group in your community? You just sort of think through who is at increased risk of drowning, and are there stakeholders that reflect this group or could bring this group's perspective to what it is that we're discussing.
I think too, something that's interesting to always figure out is who's already doing things, and it kind of goes to that who's missing from the table, but then what is already happening and how does that fit in with like the data, what the data is saying, what the, you know, moving forward, so that you're not duplicating and recreating the wheel.
After you get past your sort of initial step one, which is that overall planning, and start thinking about people and partners, the other remaining pieces of that reflection phase are what water is in our community where kids are or adults are drowning, right? So where are the water? And you know, you can think about it from the pool perspective. Is it public pools, community pools, backyard pools, in the summer only, all open all year, lakefront? We've got ocean beaches, we've got rivers and paddling. I mean, you just sort of, where are the water sources in your community, and who's responsible for them, from a safety, signage, all of those perspectives, because those are potential partners. And then you can think about, to your point, Alyssa, what's already happening in this community. So we know a lot of what we know will work if you put it in place. So who's doing water safety education already in the community? Are the schools involved? If they are, great, let's bring some schools. If they aren't, let's bring them anyway, because that's a wonderful opportunity if you start thinking about implementation. The swim schools should be there. The aquatics facilities managers should be there. The folks that are maybe teaching CPR in the community should be considered. And you know, again, retailers who are selling life jackets or other things, pool companies that are providing the chemicals for the pools can also be a great partner in terms of sharing information out. So sort of just thinking about everything that's going on with respect to that environment, and who are those people, and start thinking about them and how they might already be doing something that you can build upon. Because that's the other thing. No community is really starting from zero when it comes to drowning prevention. There's already something in place for sure. And what you want to do is maximize that where you can, bring in additional partners and fill any gaps, so that you're addressing the major risks that you have happening in your community that are resulting in a fatal or non-fatal drowning.
So I have a question that's not on the list, but I just thought of it in terms of, so sorry, but I feel like you both can handle this. Like, does either of you have a good example of, for example, if you're working in a state and it's a large state, when you have over representation of certain places in the state and then no representation? I know we dealt with it when in Texas, we dealt with this, like metropolitan areas were represented, but fewer rural areas. Do you either have any suggestions or examples of how to deal with that?
So I think oh,
No, go ahead, Megan, go ahead.
I just was going to say that I think that was something we experienced and are still fighting against in the state of California, as an example. Many of the partners that participate in our work and that have helped build the California Water Safety Strategy are based in Southern California. But there are drownings happening all through the state, the LA County, the Inland Empire, Northern California. And so we've been really intentional about acknowledging that and identifying stakeholders, experts in their fields that can help us bridge those gaps. Whether it's state police that operate on a lake that has experienced drowning, whether it's, you know, the Forest Service that is addressing drownings that are happening in some of their facilities. It could be the YMCA in Northern California or the Boys and Girls Clubs. But it's really about acknowledging that gap in geographic representation and really trying to find the right folks to come to the table. In California, we do have an annual summit. And so we're moving the summit up to Northern California this year in 2026 as a goal of really ensuring that Northern Californians know that we're serious about how important you know, their work is to us. Because I think a big part of, I would say like the biggest issue in this space is so much, and I don't know if it's across injury prevention, but I know in drowning, the biggest issue that I see is that there's so much good work happening with so many excellent experts in their field, but it's happening in silos. And so it's that coordinated action that we really need to kind of breathe some fresh life into. And it's my hope, it's my like dream that these tools and these resources that we've provided to you give you kind of the skeleton, the outline to bring that coordinated action together. Because we all know that you guys are doing great work. And it's this idea of figuring out how to come together, how to not replicate what doesn't work, right? Not recreate the wheel, but to recreate those best practices and to ensure that happens with evidence, right? Everything's evidence informed. We have data to back up what we're doing, and that we can borrow against what we know works and not try to do something that we know has failed. But we can only know that if we're collaborating, right?
Yeah. A couple more examples if you're looking for people in rural areas. If there is a Parks and Rec department in a community, they're often a group that is involved in something related to or in actually water-related recreational activities. Public health units often have somebody that's doing injury that you can engage with. EMS is often being sent out when an event happens, an incident, drowning incident happens. And so they, again, not only may have some experience and data that may be helpful, but they are also, you know, they've lived through those incidents and they often are very passionate about not wanting to see that happen again. And then, you know, if you've got a rural hospital, they can sometimes at least have a limited amount of data that may be helpful to you, but you also have, again, nurses that are just seeing these kids come in or these adults come in and they just don't want to see that sort of thing again. And my last plea would be, given my home is Safe Kids, is look and see if you have a Safe Kids Coalition in your area, because even if they are located in a more metropolitan setting, many of them are covering a county area. And so they may have other partners that they may be able to connect you with and or maybe doing sort of outreach work into rural areas as well.
Great. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving along because I guess I get stuck sometimes in the role of moderator of wanting to stay and dig deeper, but we're going to keep moving. So the next question is around just common challenges. So what are a few of the challenges that can come up when bringing diverse groups together? And then how do you address them early?
One of the things we learned with the U.S. National Action Plan is that language varies from sector to sector. And so I think just acknowledging that everybody's coming at this and maybe using slightly different language is can be a fun icebreaker, even if you come up with some terms that you know, what do you guys call this? What do you guys call this? And if it's the same thing, great, but you'll often find some interesting differences in that sort of thing. I also think it's, you know, really stating up front that you recognize that the solution to this issue is pulling all these puzzle pieces together, and that all those puzzle pieces are valuable to the process. I think sometimes the core group can hold really tight on what they're trying to do. So finding ways and tasks and opportunities to let others that aren't part of that core group really feel. So spreading the load out a little bit is another way to reduce tension for people that are feeling potentially left out if they aren't part of a core group. So again, you know, in the national pen, we had working groups that were multi-sectoral, and we brought in reviewers and commenters. And so there's all sorts of opportunities. And again, that first step in the plan, in the reflection phase, asks you to think through each step along the way. Is this a place where you want to bring other people in? What are some of the other roles that you can give people? So I think it's really important to create an inclusive environment, to recognize that turf will come up. But, you know, I think the other thing we learned was that we don't have enough evidence out there to say one swim program is better than another, one water safety program is better than another, but any swim program or water safety program is probably better than none. So, you know, talk to your colleagues. If you've got more than one program going in the community, have them have a conversation. Where are the commonalities? What are the things that you all agree on that are really important going forward? And I think just finding the common ground and buying into that overall goal, which is you want to have your community as safe as possible when it comes to drowning prevention.
So, Megan?
Thanks, Alyssa. So, Morag made some excellent points there. I am also thinking about the day-to-day, and acknowledging that we are all working with very full plates and very small budgets. And so I think sometimes these efforts can get stalled if we don't really focus on intentionally providing deadlines, meeting, you know, whatever the timeline works for you, once a month, every other week, and trying to create some accountability on what our goals and what our expectations are. And so that, from an administrative perspective, looks like setting deadlines, setting timelines, taking notes during meetings so that everyone knows who's accountable for what. And it can be as simple as at that initial core meeting when you have your, you know, your group of 10 people around that first roundtable, you know, okay, you're going to be in charge of serving as the secretary of this effort and taking notes. And we're going to go through those notes at our next meeting and make sure we hit all the goals that we tried to accomplish. Because I think that that's a place where we find state strategies and community strategies can get held up, is if folks are simply stretched too thin, and at the onset you don't do a really strong job of setting expectations, setting goals, and putting some timelines around your work. It may drag on longer than you would like.
I have another one, and that is just the overwhelmingness of the whole process, because I know we walked through that in terms of just how it feels big. It is big what we're trying to do with these state plans and community plans. I know what was helpful for us when we were in the Texas process was going and looking at those who came before us. So I know we leaned a lot on looking at what was California doing. They had just released their strategy, and then when Hawaii, and I see some of the Hawaii folks on here, like when Hawaii released theirs, and looking at what other people are doing, that either coming before you or alongside you, and supporting each other, because you can learn a lot, and then taking it piece by piece instead of, it's that, I don't remember what the quote is, but the something about how do you eat an elephant piece by piece or something like that, where, you know, making it manageable and having steps where you can see progress. I know that was that can be, this is a big task, just kind of acknowledging that. Okay, anything else? Panelist team?
We're good.
Okay, I'll move us to the, why is the reflection phase important and how does it connect to action?
I think I even said this earlier. One of the things that we really recognize is that um, we aren't starting from square one with drowning prevention. There's already activities going on in the community. And I think one of the um, everybody gets very action oriented and they just want to do something, right? Do something to prevent another drowning from happening. And you can leap right into action, but if you leap right into action, you may miss some of the really important risk factors. You may miss some of the locations where drowning is more currently happening. So we really wanted to encourage people to ensure that what they were doing was data driven. And so it's the drowning data, but it's also information about the water sources, like I said, information about the programs that are already in place, and then the people that are already working in this area, and bringing all of those pieces together and saying, what do we got covered and what don't we have covered? And once you've sort of figured that out, or what can we build on and enhance, action planning becomes much more straightforward because you're really clear on where your gaps are, where your strengths are, and how you can leverage those strengths to move things forward, and how you may need to be getting more creative and bringing more people in to address any gaps that you've identified.
Megan, do you have anything you want to add in that space?
I think Morag covered that nicely.
Okay. All right. So
really quickly though, I
go
do
ahead,
want to
yeah.
just mention, one of the things that we're starting to see now that we have an action map up on an action dashboard up on the website to kind of pinpoint where there is coalition activity happening around the country, where strategies are being developed around the country. One of the things that's kind of come to the surface is there are coalitions that have been out there for a long, long time, right? But there may not be a physical document that indicates like, this is our strategy and this is all, like we've talked about, it's evidence-based. And so there is still, I think, an opportunity for those coalitions to step back, right? You're doing great work. We're not saying you're not doing great work, but it still benefits you and your community to take a step back and do that reflection to see where you are today. I think it's also beneficial because you can see the gains that you've made over time when you do that as well. So just
that's a great point, and that reflection can happen throughout. And yeah, and it's interesting because I hear coalitions that are operating, and I had no idea that they were operating either. So I think it's cool that you the action plan has that dashboard. And I encourage you, if you are not reporting in and you are out there doing things, to get on the map. Okay, so how do we keep people involved and motivated over time? As Megan was mentioning, everyone has their regular jobs. Most people are not doing this is their full-time job, this particular piece. So how do we keep people engaged and motivated over time?
That's a great question. I want to ask, how are we doing at keeping everyone engaged and motivated? Can you give us a report card?
I know, right?
There's some like kind of low-hanging fruit that you can do. And it's actually pretty important to do this. As you're thinking about your role as a leader in your space, is looking at who's supporting your work, who is kind of helping you reach your goals, and acknowledging that. Whether it's highlighting that partner that's been with you from day one in your upcoming newsletter. Maybe it's featuring them on your social media channels. Maybe it's simply supporting them at their local events. And then it's celebrating these milestones of success, right? We have the framework or the outline for our plan. That's something to celebrate, right? I know everyone wants the final plan and published and starting to implement it, but each step of the way is something to celebrate. I think, Judith, you in New Jersey do a great job with that in making everyone aware how much effort they're putting in, the impact it's having on the process that you're going through. Whether it's like celebrating through pins that you can wear at your next in-person meeting, or even I have right here like the New Jersey Water Safety Summit in just a simple frame that Judith had made for us. And so I think it's like these little things that make people feel valued and acknowledged and appreciated, because it is not an easy process. It takes time, and you want to make sure that folks feel included along the way.
Yeah.
And acknowledged, I guess.
I mean, the power of this is a people process, and you keep people processes going by, to Megan's point, engaging them and communicating. And communication doesn't have to be, you know, a newsletter every month or something like that. It can simply be an email out to everybody that's involved, letting them know the progress that's been made in the last month. And, or if you're stuck, there's a great opportunity to say, we're bogged down, guys, and we're going to have a meeting on this date to sort of figure out how we unbog. But, you know, you really just keeping in touch with people, because it is people that make this happen. It starts with that passion, and you need to keep that passion going throughout.
Yeah, I was actually going to acknowledge Judith also, because she does a really good job of nominating water safety champions from New Jersey and then highlighting them at the their summit that's coming up in December. And so I do think it's those little, like, showing that they don't have to be huge impacts. They can be, like, we just released our strategy or whatever those bigger things are, but the little milestones to say, hey, we are moving forward. It may be slow and we sometimes may go backwards, but we are doing these things, and letting people share their impacts and highlight what they're doing. I think is easy, and it usually doesn't cost very much money, because I know funding is often social media is a great way to share out some of those things.
I have one more example before we move on from this one, and that would be, you look at the initial data, but I will give a shout out here to Kirby, because, you know, he's sort of tracking in real time drownings down in Florida, and we surpassed last year's number, and that's news. And not only is that news, but that also ignites the passion again, because holy cow, what's going on? We're going in the wrong direction, folks. We got to get this finished. And so that can also motivate people as well. So anytime, as tragic as a actual fatal drowning can be, but a non-fatal or fatal drowning that is occurring in your community while you're in this process is a wonderful opportunity to engage and pull people together around, talk about why you're doing what you're doing, getting them to recommit to moving through on a process. And so, yeah, it's sad, but it's why we're doing it to begin with, is to prevent those things from happening. So
yeah, the reminder of the why. I know this work is not easy, and some days it's a beatdown. I think we can probably all agree on that. But so circling back to what are our North Stars and why are we doing this? And unfortunately, sometimes that comes in the data. Okay, so how do let's see, how can leaders support balanced participation and meaningful engagement as a coalition grows? Thoughts on that?
I think you should plan for growth from the beginning. And so as you're developing your plan, I think you want to identify those places within the process that you're laying out where there is an opportunity for input or discussion, and have those up front. As you move a little further in and you decide what your priorities are, that's a great opportunity to actually put together some smaller working groups, which can involve more people to then come around a table and work on a particular issue. I think that it's really important, though, to keep the door open while the process is going on, because I think sometimes the door feels closed in those situations, but then it's really looking for those places where that additional assistance would be helpful anyway, and building those out and letting people know ahead of time that when they are going to be coming, when they're going to be happening, so that they're aware that this is a time when we're, you know, whether it's we've got a draft and we want everybody to weigh in and let us know if we're in the right direction, or if it's, you know, a brainstorm around what are possible solutions and we're going to have a meeting. I mean, again, you just sort of think through, lay out what you think your process will be, and when and how you want to involve people. And if you share that up front, they know when it's coming. And so it's it's sort of all clear for them, and they're less likely to feel not included because they know when you're going to be coming to them.
I think an idea that is bubbling up for me right now is succession planning in your leadership group too, or allowing for people to enter in and step up in leadership space where maybe when the formation happened, they weren't part of it, or they were in a different space and time availability or things like that, but constantly looking for ways to let people lead. I'm saying that because I'm realizing we should be doing that in some areas. But you know, there's a lot of room, I think, for people to step in and step up, and so just always kind of looking at, hey, do we need how is everybody who's on, maybe it's the core leadership team, doing, and does anybody need to step back, and are there people that can step up? I think that new fresh ideas space can be helpful too.
Yeah. And, you know, I alluded to this earlier as well, but you can slice the pie in so many different ways. You can slice it by the water within which these activities are occurring. So pools are very different from the ocean, from a lake. You can slice it by age group. You can slice it by high risk group. You can talk, let's get the aquatics community together. Let's get the public health folks together. And then let's bring in, I mean, there's so many ways you can bring people together to have a conversation, and then bring those conversations together to help enrich in what it is that you're doing. So, you know, I think it also can be helpful to talk to that group early on once you've got your plan, and ensure that, and I've said, lay out those opportunities where you're going to bring people together, but get their feedback on it. Are there other opportunities that they see that would be helpful? You know, once you start making that plan, you've got to start thinking that eventually you're going to implement it as well. So there's opportunities for advocacy as you go along to ensure that everybody's aware of what it is that you're doing. And that can be another role that people can step into and help you out with. So there's much more work, so much work, I guess, to Megan's point, getting it all coordinated is really what you're trying to do. But I think, you know, acknowledging everything that's going on and finding ways to do that is as important as bringing forward what the new is going to be and figuring out who's going to do that.
Okay, I'm conscious of the time, so I don't know, Tina, do we want to jump into, are there questions that do we want to jump into a Q&A? Oh, Megan, go ahead.
Right, there's just one last thing I wanted to mention that I haven't yet, and that is something that we were very intentional with related to the U.S. National Water Safety Action Plan, and we have been in all of the state and community strategies that the ZAC Foundation has been involved in. And that is ensuring that there is an affected family member involved at every step of the way. Morag, I attended a Safe Kids Injury Prevention Day session on Tuesday of this week, or whatever day it was. And really just hearing Shazak Sonoda speak so powerfully about her experience, Christina's Cause last week talking about their story. At the National Action Plan level, we made sure there was a member of Families United involved in every working group that we established. I'm seeing that as a real pinpoint of success at the state and local levels. The level of accountability that those of us that haven't lost a child to a drowning feel to ensure that we succeed in this work is made so much stronger by hearing those stories. And so for those of you that come at this from a purely professional side, right? You didn't personally lose a family member to a drowning. Ensuring that you have those folks at the table and that you're hearing their story. And I'll tell you, the media wants to hear those stories. They want to help amplify that message so that they don't have to tell those stories anymore. So to the extent that you're doing this work at the state or local level, or you're starting to think about initiating this work, find a family member that can provide some input, some insight, and that can help. They don't need to be there every day, you know, at every meeting, but that can come in and can share some motivation, some insight, and some perspective into the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you for raising that. And I know Jessie is on here from Hawaii, and she and Allison are both part of that. And there's multiple families engaged in Texas and all of these. I think that's such an important point. And if you need to be connected with potential families, I know Megan and I both work very, very closely with Families United to Prevent Drowning, and can maybe help make some of those connections if you don't have family advocates that are part of your coalition yet. Super important. Okay, Tina, do we have questions? Do we want to?
There aren't any specific questions in the chat, but if anyone has them, now's the time. You can come off mute and ask them.
Do you want to talk while we're waiting for that? Do you want to mention what's going to happen at the conference? Just that the sessions y'all are doing?
Thank you. So at the upcoming AOAP NDPA conference in February that's being held at the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs, there will be 2 sessions specific to the National Action Plan. The first one is kind of this 101 session, similar for those who were there last year, similar to last year, that really talks about what is the plan. We'll walk through the website and the different tools and resources that are available through the website. So that particular session will take place on Monday, February the 16th. The second session that we'll be offering will be similar conversations to this, right? We're going to bring in states, counties, communities who are either developing.
I don't know what happened, but I'm the host.
So just building off of what Tina was saying, we'll be having those sessions where we will have state level speakers coming in to talk about their experiences, whether it's New Jersey or Hawaii or California. And then we'll be having community level speakers as well, talking about their experience, breaking out into roundtables for little workshop meetings that we can really drill down and get to the nitty gritty of what your questions are or what their process was. And we'll have the chance to report out on that progress that's made and ask lots of questions. So to the extent that you're available to attend the Water Safety Conference and you can earmark those sessions, we would really love to have you there and look forward to that dialogue.
Thank you, Megan, for finishing that up. Apologies, I somehow lost my internet connection. I don't know what happened. That session is a double session, but we're going to split with the timeline that exists for each individual session at the conference. That one's going to take place on Wednesday afternoon, February the 18th. Just to put that out there.
And that session, Tina, is it true that you can go to pieces of it, or what's
yes, we're purposely structuring it so that, you know, if you have other conference things that you need to attend or meetings that you need to have, that you can come and go, whether it's during a specific time frame or any time, right? The idea is to be able to have a conversation. So even if you're sitting at a round table and you need to get up and move to another round table that fits the work that you're doing a little bit better, then you will have that flexibility of movement both within the session, and if you need to exit or enter at any different point during that session, you're welcome to do that as well.
Great. Well, I'm going to put in a shameless plug for people to join the NDPA, because you get a discount to the conference, and then sign up to the conference. Then you'll get these deep working sessions. I know we've been working together to mindfully put those sessions together and make sure that there's space within the conference for the those who are working on state and local strategies to have time together to really do deep work. And I'm sad that I'm doing this presentation at the same time and won't be able to attend all of that. But I think there's going to be some really great learning amongst in that session. Okay, I don't see questions. I don't know where you want to go from here.
I was just going to add one more thing.
Yeah.
For those that aren't aware, I think probably most of you are aware, but we also have office hours, monthly office hours. We switch between a community focus or local focus and a state focus, and sometimes we throw in another topic webinar in there as well. But all of that is available on the website for upcoming events. And then the other thing that I will say is that we have also had conversations. Megan's had conversations with multiple groups. I've been reached out to and talked to folks. They're just getting started. They're at that instigator stage, and they're trying to figure out what to do, and they've started to think about what a process might look like, and they've got some questions. So you can do that in the office hours, but a number of us are also able to spend some time with you if that's needed. So I would just say reach out to the Secretariat and we'll talk amongst ourselves and figure out who can help.
And to
And
build
I
on-
will, oh, sorry.
I'm probably going to say what you were going to say, Tina. I was just going to highlight, if you go to the watersafetyplan.us URL and scroll to the bottom, you'll see where you can register for our next office hours, which is scheduled for this coming Wednesday, November 19th at 1 p.m. Eastern. So if you would register for that, we're going to have folks from the Temporary Commission in New York coming on to present about their process, their experience, and where they're headed from here. They're coming to the end of, I think it's been a 3-year commission now, and will be submitting their final report to the governor. So really excited to see, you know, the process that has unfolded there, right? Judith, I saw you put in the chat that your process has looked quite different than California or Florida. And it's interesting to see that while New York isn't producing a strategy, they are producing a really well thought through series of recommendations to their governor that will likely be evolved into a statewide strategy. And we're just really interested in all these different approaches and hearing from you all about what has worked. Because we know what we have. Well, there's been a lot of thought that's been put into it. It's not perfect. And it's a process that we're, continuing to evaluate and are looking forward to continue to put feedback and thought into.
And I think that's some of the beauty of this work, is that the action plan has provided these tools and resources, and there's so much happening and so much learning, and it doesn't have to look one way. And I think that's the beauty of it. And you can, learn from each other. I have attended some of the office hours in the past, and they're great because there's a presentation, but then there's also time to network and ask questions. And so if you haven't attended those, I'm gonna encourage you as well. And I just want to say again, thank you for Action Plan friends for asking NDPA to be part of this, and for each of you that are out there doing the work that you're doing in your community, your state, because it's hard work, it's heart work, it's important work, and it's showing, all the people that are on here showing that I mean, we are making impacts. It might be slow, might be not as fast as we want, but it's really nice to see everyone here and hear the stories and the tips and tricks and strategies.
And to piggyback on that, and we briefly mentioned this previously, but we have on the website of the action plan now, there's an action dashboard tab at the top. And so you can click on that and it will take you to the map. And so it shows you the landscape of the strategies that are being developed or that have been developed across the US, in addition to existing coalitions, some of which we know have a published strategy or a firm document. Some are listed that we know are doing great work, but there might not be an actual document. It might be more of an internal strategy. We would just encourage you, if you're part of a coalition that's not currently on that map, there's a form at the bottom of it that you can complete so that we can kind of take a look at what it is that you're doing and ideally add you to that map so that others can not only interact with you and see the work that you're doing, but if they're looking to do something similar and are just trying to get started, that it provides them with a source of contact so that they can reach out to you and ask direct questions. If you're in a similar community structure, perhaps, or within a state, but you're within a state that has a plan, but it's a local coalition that might need somebody to reach out to, or vice versa. So we really want that to be a resource for folks to be able to leverage at least that contact information. I'm going to throw it back here in the chat again too, so it's front and center, but at least the contact information and directions to a website if it does exist. So if there aren't any questions, I'd like to thank both our speakers, Morag and Megan, for joining us today, and Alyssa for joining us as our moderator, and also sharing this through the NDPA network. Really appreciate the support that NDPA has provided and the collaboration as we continue to move forward in this space together. So thank you. We'll stay on a little bit longer if anyone has questions. Otherwise, thank you for attending. We'll make sure this has been recorded, so we'll get this posted up on our website on the resources page. That link has been thrown into the chat previously, and we'll certainly send it out the door through social media as well, so you can share it with others. So thank you again.